All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this press conference following today's General Affairs meeting, the first one chaired by the Hungarian presidency. I'm Anna Atanasov, the presidency spokesperson. Joining us today are Mr. János Bóka, Minister for EU Affairs of Hungary, and Mr. Didier Reynders, European Commissioner for Justice. I will first give the floor to Minister Bóka, followed by Commissioner Reynders, who will provide us a readout on today's discussions. We will then, of course, take your questions. Minister, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, dear Commissioner. Process of the Western Balkans, recognizing that the EU is not complete without their inclusion. We expect to make tangible progress in the EU accession of these candidate countries and also deepening cooperation through the upcoming EU Western Balkans Summit and the European political community. As part of the Council's annual rule of law dialogue, ministers had a discussion on general developments related to the rule of law in the EU, making use of the Commission's 2024 Rule of Law report. During the debate, ministers noted the Commission's overall positive assessment of the rule of law development across the EU and welcomed the progress made in the implementation of recommendations in the Rule of Law report. Delegations highlighted the need to work further to address the remaining challenges in various areas and underlined the added value of exchanging best practices and lessons learned in the framework of the annual Rule of Law dialogue. Ministers also stressed the importance of conducting an objective and honest dialogue, and several delegations welcomed the extension of the Rule of Law report to selected accession countries. The Council is expected to hold a country-specific discussion at the General Affairs Council meeting in November, focusing on developments in Malta, the Netherlands, Austria, and Poland. This year, as a novelty, Albania, Montenegro, North Macedonia, and Serbia, as the most advanced candidate countries in the accession process, and as regards their level of preparedness in the area of rule of law, were included for the first time in the Commission's Rule of Law report. Against this background, we held a general exchange of rule of law matters with these candidate countries. The Council commended the comprehensive reforms that they have implemented or initiated to strengthen the rule of law, and we encouraged candidate countries to continue their reform efforts as they prepare for EU membership. I emphasize that these candidate countries were participating in the discussion on an equal footing, so we were exchanging views with them and not about them, and our hope is to support them in their reform processes. The discussion focused on general rule of law trends. No formal conclusions were issued, and it is important to stress that this exercise does not interfere with the accession process and also does not interfere with the rule of law dialogue that we're conducting among member states. The Council also started preparations for the European Council meeting on the 17th and 18th of October by discussing the annotated draft agenda. According to the annotated draft agenda, leaders will discuss Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine and the situation in the Middle East. They will also have a first exchange on the report by Mario Draghi on the future of European competitiveness. Other possible topics include migration and security and defense. The European Council will be invited to endorse the integrated country-specific recommendations for the 2024 European semester. Under other items, leaders will take stock of preparation for the meetings of the COP29 on climate change and COP16 on biological diversity, and they may also address specific foreign policy issues in the light of events, including developments in Georgia and Moldova. This is all from my side at the beginning, and of course I am at your disposal for questions.
Thank you, Minister. Commissioner, the floor is yours.
Thank you. First of all, I was very pleased to take part in the first formal General Affairs Council with the presidency of János Bóka, and he said himself it was a very productive meeting. I want just to insist on the fact that we had a new horizontal discussion on the annual rule of law report, as well as the first discussion on the rule of law in the candidate countries covered in the 2024 report, namely Serbia, North Macedonia, Albania, and Montenegro. On this last point, I was joined by my colleague Oliver Varily, responsible for neighborhood and enlargement. Minister Boka also presented the priorities of the Hungarian presidency, and finally my colleague Maros Šefčovič intervened in the discussions on the preparation of the European Council taking place on the 17th and 18th of October. Tout d'abord, en ce qui concerne l'état de droit, la Commission a, depuis le début de son mandat, adopté 5 rapports annuels qui ont donné lieu à des discussions horizontales sur l'état de droit au sein du Conseil Affaires Générales, en plus de nombreux débats consacrés à la situation dans les différents États membres sur une base tournante. Vous le savez, dans chaque présidence, on examine un certain nombre de situations dans les États membres. Nous pouvons aujourd'hui dire que c'est devenu une pratique bien établie. Je tiens d'ailleurs à remercier la présidence hongroise de l'avoir poursuivi. La préparation du rapport sur l'état de droit repose sur un processus inclusif. Et cette année, par exemple, nous avons reçu 250 contributions de parties prenantes. Nous avons organisé plus de 650 réunions dans les 27 États membres et dans les 4 pays candidats à l'élargissement qui ont été concernés par le rapport. Ces contacts ont eu lieu avec environ 900 autorités nationales, ministères, tribunaux, cours, organismes indépendants, organisations de la société civile et autres parties prenantes. Nous pouvons constater que le rapport lui-même, y compris celui de cette année, a contribué à faire avancer des réformes positives dans de nombreux États membres. Nous progressons encore un peu cette année. 68% des recommandations formulées l'année dernière ont été suivies par les États membres en totalité ou en partie. Je ne vais pas revenir en détail sur les principales conclusions puisque nous avons déjà présenté le rapport en juillet, mais il y a 3 prochaines étapes importantes à mentionner. Premièrement, le rapport continuera à servir de base aux dialogues nationaux sur l'état de droit. Ces dialogues ont déjà eu lieu dans 8 États membres et nous avons l'intention d'en organiser plusieurs autres dans les mois à venir. Deuxièmement, comme l'a annoncé la présidente de la Commission dans ses orientations politiques pour le prochain mandat, la Commission ajoutera une dimension marché unique au rapport sur l'état de droit. Cette dimension portera sur les questions d'état de droit qui touchent les entreprises, en particulier les PME, qui exercent des activités transfrontalières au sein de l'Union européenne. Enfin, nous établirons un lien plus étroit entre les recommandations du rapport sur l'état de droit et le soutien financier accordé aux États membres dans le cadre du budget de l'Union. On the first exchange of views on the rule of law in 4 candidate countries, these are the 4 countries most advanced in the accession process, or when it comes to the rule of law in particular. And it was a pleasure to have ministers from these 4 countries with us today for the first time. Again, I will not go into the details of the report as we presented its finding already in July. But what I want to underline is that each of the 4 countries is clearly committed to taking measures to strengthen the rule of law. And as the President of the Commission underlined in her State of the Union address last year, the aim of this process is to put these countries on an equal footing with member states and to support them further in their reforms, as we will do with other accession countries when they are ready. The accession process is and will remain a fully merit-based process, which each candidate assessed on its own progress towards meeting all criteria. Adherence to the rule of law and fundamental values is a cornerstone of this process. And so it's very important to say that we have started with 4 candidate countries, but normally we'll continue to extend the list in the next years with the most advanced candidate countries in the process. Thirdly, with regards to the priority of the Hungarian presidency of the Council, as I said, the Commission supports the ambitious agenda and priorities. I said that during the Council, and I want to insist on the fact that for the Commission, you have seen that the priorities are going to Ukraine, and the President of the Commission was again in Ukraine in the last days, to competitiveness, to defense, to migration, to the rule of law, and we have discussed a lot today on the rule of law. There are also important other files that will be further discussed by the General Council, from enlargement and reflections on institutional reforms to strengthening democracy and the rule of law in the EU, as we discussed, I said already today. With regards to enlargement, the Commission will present the annual enlargement package in a couple of weeks, which is complementary to the analysis provided for some candidate countries under the rule of law report. This package will include a detailed assessment of the state of play and the progress made in all the enlargement countries, including the 4 who join us today. This will be a moment to look at the steps to be taken going forward. Enlargement is, of course, not only about those countries who aim to join the Union, but about the European Union itself and its readiness to grow. In this regard, the discussions on the future of Europe, which are held in the General Council, will also constitute an important work strand. Lastly, on the preparation for the October European Council, the Commission welcomes the annotated draft agenda and considers it is a good basis to prepare the leaders' meeting. As you heard last week, the future Commission will work to ensure that the EU reinforces its competitiveness and that we at the same time achieve our objectives for the twin digital and green transition. The upcoming leaders' exchange of views on the Draghi report will guide the Commission on its efforts to deliver on these objectives. On the agenda, there will also be the EU support to Ukraine. In this context, Vice President Šefčovič briefed the ministers about the President's visit to Ukraine last week. It was an opportunity to reiterate the Commission's measures related to the winter plan for Ukraine and the EU financial support to Ukraine more generally. And you know the difficult situation that we have now at the geopolitical level. Maybe after the General Assembly of the United Nations, they will have other kind of discussions on the agenda of the European Council. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. And now we will take some questions. First, Jennifer, please. Whichever you prefer.
Oh, as you want.
Thank you very much for the floor. Jennifer Rankin from The Guardian newspaper. It's well known, of course, that Hungary is currently under an Article 7 procedure, that the rule of law report that you were discussing today raised the Commission's concerns about corruption in Hungary, also about the independence of public service broadcasters, about the so-called vilification, quote, of civil society organizations, and I could go on. So the question I have both for the Commissioner and for the Minister is, do you really think it's credible that Hungary has today chairing a discussion on the rule of law? Is it credible for Hungary to chair future discussions on this topic? Thank you.
Today we had a horizontal discussion on the in the framework of the Council's rule of law dialogue based on the Commission's annual rule of law report. Hungary performed its duties as a presidency as an honest broker, sincerely cooperating with all member states and institutions. And I received no other indication from any member state or institutions at the end of the day.
No, just to insist on the fact that if you compare the actual situation with the situation 5 years ago, we are discussing all the time in the Geneva Council about the rule of law. It's quite new due to the rule of law report. And today it was a general discussion. For the first time, we have had another discussion about 4 candidates, but we will have a new discussion in November about specific situation in 4 member states, because you know that during all the presidencies, we are working on specific situations. And about the Article 7, you know, the Commission is at the disposal of the Council to organize a discussion, or with a hearing, or with a state of play. But that depends from the agenda of the presidency. If it's not during this semester, it will be during the next one.
Next question, please.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sasha Farbach, TVP World. I do want to follow up on that, if I may, because I think a colleague wasn't clear enough. But there is currently a particular law, the law in defense of national sovereignty, and there is currently that procedure. This is a question to you, Commissioner. There's been a reasoned opinion that was received back in July, and currently right now, the next step, as I understand it, is a proceeding to the European Court of Justice. You say we're at the disposal of the Council, but what is your position in terms of being in charge of justice for responding to that, as a colleague from The Guardian has just said?
No, I said about the procedure concerning the rule of law. We have the classical debate on the rule of law report, a general approach. This time it was with an additional point for the 4 candidates. We have a specific discussion during all the presidencies about countries for in the different discussions, and will be the case also in November. And then we have the Article 7. It's on the Article 7 that I said we are in the hand of the Council. Of course, I don't have the capacity to organize the agenda of the Council, but we are at the disposal now or later to continue the discussion with hearing or state of play. What you ask is something else. We have started a procedure about such a sovereignty law, and what we have said that we will initiate an infringement proceedings, and you know that it was introduced, in fact, in February. Then we have sent a reasoned opinion to Hungary in May, and now we have received at the end of July the reaction of the Hungarian authorities. And so it's true that you are currently assessing the situation and analyzing the response, but you know the concerns that we have, and we will not hesitate to go further if it's needed on the basis of our analysis. But I don't want to say what will be the decision before the decision, but we analyze it now, and you know what are our concerns about such a kind of law.
Okay, next question. Katalin, please.
Thank you very much. I'm Katalin Halmai, Hungarian journalist. It's a question about the priorities of the Hungarian presidency, and I will address it to the minister. In the public debate about the priorities of the Hungarian presidency, all member states welcomed the main priorities, but almost all of them regretted that Hungary didn't include the support to Ukraine in the priorities of the presidency. Could you tell us why it didn't include it? And also, at the end of the discussion, you said that you had taken note of the comments and they will be fed into the implementation of the presidency program. Did you refer here to the comments on Ukraine also? And would you elaborate how they could be fed into the Hungarian presidency priorities? Thanks.
Yes, I can confirm that as the debate on the presidency priorities was a public debate, it is clear that one of the messages quite a few member states formulated was that they consider Ukraine and the continued support for Ukraine to be the top priority of the European Union. I must emphasize that the Hungarian presidency program also deals with the continuing support for Ukraine. And in my remarks, I also reiterated the intention of the Hungarian presidency to continue with legislative and non-legislative files in the spirit of the guidance and conclusion of the European Council and adopted EU policies. I also mentioned that these remarks will feed into the activities of the Hungarian presidency. On this, I can give you two very specific examples, as this has been the question. For example, the G7 legislative package on loan to Ukraine was mentioned. I can confirm that this will be on the agenda of the COREPER already tomorrow, and we schedule the necessary working group meeting starting on Thursday. There was also mention of helping Ukraine prepare for the winter, and this winter package will be on the agenda of the COREPER next week, and the Energy Council will discuss this on October the 15th. These are just some specific examples how these remarks will feed into the activities of the presidency.
Thank you. Next question, Jorge.
Hello, Jorge Liboreiro with Euronews. Two questions. Minister, I wanted to ask you some details about this mandate that you've been given to negotiate the fine imposed by the European Court of Justice. I'm trying to understand, because your government is saying that you won't pay a single euro, but at the same time you want to negotiate. So what exactly are you going to achieve? A discount, a rebate, or what exactly? And for the Commissioner, when you presented the rule of law report in July, I asked you if you were ready to freeze funds for Slovakia, and you told me not yet, that you were monitoring the situation. So I want to ask you again, are you willing to freeze funds for Slovakia? And if that's the case, when will you do it, and how much will you freeze? Thank you both.
Thank you for the question. For clarity, I would like to start by saying that this issue was not discussed by any council working groups or formats, so there is no council position on this. And again, I would like to emphasize that this issue was not discussed at today's General Affairs Council. So I can answer to this question in my capacity as EU Affairs Minister of Hungary, but not in my capacity as presidency. I will do my best to answer this in very shortly, since it's not exactly the topic of today's press briefing. I received a mandate from the Hungarian government to engage the European Commission in a constructive way to start discussing how the Court of Justice judgment can be implemented. In the framework of this exercise, I met Commissioner Johansson in Strasbourg last week. We agreed on a timetable, how we will conduct these discussions, and also on the technicalities and the channels of communications. This is where we are with this. As far as the financial penalty is concerned, I can confirm that the Hungarian government will not pay this penalty. As I understand, the Commission has other tools at its disposal to recuperate this sum, and we are also looking at our legal possibilities on how certain expenses that we have incurred in the protection of the border could be offset against this penalty.
Two remarks. First, about your first question, I want just to confirm that it's the responsibility of the Commission to implement the decision of the European Court of Justice and on the content. But if there are some decisions concerning fines, of course, we need also to implement. And we have the different tools to do that. It will be not the first time that we'll use the different tools to be sure that we'll receive the amount decided by the court. It's very clear, but it's a process that we will also use in other cases. About Slovakia, first of all, I want to confirm what you said. The report, the rule of law report, is very clear about the situation and some recommendations. We had this morning again the discussion with the Slovakian authorities, and I said I'm very open to organize the same debate at the national level if they want. So it's possible maybe to organize a debate in Slovakia like we did in other member states to see what are the real possibility to improve the situation. And you know that I have had myself meeting with the Prime Minister, with the Deputy Prime Minister, with the Minister of Justice to work on it. And we are in very concrete exchange to make progress with some reforms in the judicial system. About the financial consequence, you may ask the question, but I'm not in charge, of course, of the implementation of the Recovery and Resilience Plan. I'm not directly in charge about the conditionality. Till now, what is possible to say, we didn't take any decision in the Commission about that. There are ongoing reflections, of course, but till now it was no. I didn't see any decision in the Commission on those part of the process. But again, concerning the rule of law report, the message was very clear. I know that we have received a lot of criticism on paper from the Slovakian authorities, but I have confirmed that the report is the clear assessment of the Commission, and we are open to engage a real debate at the national level if they want. So I'm very open, to be clear, to go to Slovakia and to discuss also with all the different partners, certainly in the national parliament.
Yes, please.
Yes, hi, thank you for the floor. This is Fabio Napoli for the Italian news agency Policy Europe. I've got a couple of questions on the next agenda for the European Council. The first, since competitiveness will be on the agenda, I would like to know if you are planning to invite Mario Draghi to present his report. And second, if you saw around the table already some divisions between the ministers on certain topics, and if so, which ones, maybe migrations, I don't know. Thank you.
The preparation of the European Council is the competence of the President of the European Council. What we can do as a presidency is to collect the comments, suggestions, and observation of the member states and channel this into the decision-making process. It is the competence of the President of the European Council to invite external actors to discuss issues of general concern and interest. So I propose to address this question to the cabinet of the President of the European Council. On your second question, I can say in very broad terms that the date of the European Council is still quite far. It's scheduled for the 17th and 18th of October. At this point, the member states usually have a very preliminary discussion of political interest and political ideas. And of course, the preparatory process aims at increasing the convergence among these views. This discussion today was only a first step in this process.
Thank you so much. I see one more. Yes, please. Yeah.
Thank you. Marco Bresolini, Italian newspaper La Stampa. I have a question for you, Commissioner, and then also if you want to add something from your perspective, Minister. The Commission decided to boycott all the informal council of the Hungarian presidency. The Commissioner didn't participate in the meeting in Budapest. Will this boycott be applied also to the informal meeting of the leaders? I mean, have you discussed inside the Commission to apply this so-called sanction also to this summit, or this is not included? And a question for you: so, do you expect this summit will go on with the full participation, or do you fear boycott from member states and the Commission, as it happened with the minister meeting? Thank you.
No, on the side of the Commission, I want to say that first of all, it's true that we didn't take part in the
No, de la Comisión no se ha debatido. De momento no tengo una respuesta a su pregunta. Por mi parte, puedo confirmar que la Comisión y todos los Estados miembros estarán representados en todas las reuniones informales que estamos organizando por parte de la Presidencia. El nivel de presentación ha cambiado, ha sido diferente, dependiendo de cada Estado miembro. Solamente puedo decir que el objetivo de la Presidencia húngara es debatir temas de preocupación europea, los retos que tenemos que requieren soluciones europeas, y para debatir esto con los Estados miembros e instituciones de cara a una búsqueda de un enfoque común europeo, buscando siempre una convergencia y, ¿por qué no, un consenso? Eso es importante y yo creo que esto está en interés de todos, participar en ese tipo de debates. Desde mi perspectiva, esos debates son útiles para las relaciones que van a estas reuniones, que están bien preparadas y que tienen una autorización política para participar en estos debates, y esa ha sido mi experiencia. Ha sido así, se ha hecho en todas las reuniones informales bajo nuestra presidencia.
Thank you. Bogdarka, please.
Thank you very much. I'm Bogdarka, message from the Hungarian television M1, and let me ask Minister Bóka.
Le voy a pedir al ministro que nos haga un pequeño resumen de la reunión de hoy en húngaro, por favor.
Point of order. I would be happy.
Un punto de procedimiento. Encantado de hacerlo, pero después. Si es resumir solo en inglés, pues quizás sea más adecuado hacerlo una vez que haya concluido la rueda de prensa.
Thank you. David Carretta, Radio Radicale, Italian Radio. We have heard...
Hemos escuchado a su primer ministro diciendo en X que iba a unirse a la petición de Países Bajos de hacer un opt-out, de salirse de la política de migración y asilo. Pero bueno, es que ese tema es competencia del Consejo Europeo y también del Consejo de Asuntos Generales. Así que, en su calidad de ministro, le pregunto si está preparado para cambiar el tratado para conseguir ese opt-out pedido por su primer ministro. Bueno, esto no se debatió en el Consejo de hoy, en absoluto, así que solo puedo responder en calidad de ministro húngaro, no de presidente. Le puedo decir que el gobierno húngaro ha decidido pedir salirse de la política de migración y asilo de la Unión Europea. Y
bueno, según tengo entendido, requiere un cambio de los tratados, así que el gobierno húngaro adoptará todas las medidas administrativas necesarias para desencadenar ese procedimiento.
Bien, con ello ponemos un punto en final a esta. Sí, adelante. Sí, gracias. Hoy se ha hablado de las prioridades de la presidencia, la relación con Suiza. ¿Ha habido un debate o simplemente no hubo un debate? ¿Y cuáles son sus prioridades concretas?
The EU-Switzerland
La relación de la Unión Europea con Suiza no se han debatido hoy en la reunión. Se mencionaron el marco cuando se presentaron las prioridades de la presidencia húngara y quiero recalcar que la presidencia contempla esas relaciones con Suiza de forma muy importante. Nuestra intención es ver si es posible incluir esto en el próximo Consejo de Asuntos Generales, dependiendo un poquito de todas las cosas que pasen de aquí a entonces. Gracias. Bien, pues ahora sí, ponemos un punto final a nuestra conferencia de prensa. Gracias a los intérpretes, gracias comisario, gracias ministro, gracias a todos por su presencia. Adiós y buenas tardes.